In today's show, we're looking at the top 20 players for fantasy basketball over the last 2 weeks for category leagues and for fantasy points leagues. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We're looking at the top 20 players over the last 2 weeks in fantasy basketball on a per game basis, and we're going to start with category leagues. So here we go. At number 1, Joel Embiid. 33 minutes a night, averaging 35 points and 10 rebounds, a block, a steal, 58 from the field, 87 from the line. He's hitting 53% of his threes, so that's probably going to come down somewhat, but Embiid's the third ranked player overall this season. I think he's probably going to be a top 5 guy on a per game basis this year. He's been awesome. Like, honestly, awesome. Top 3, top 2 MVP candidate, depending on how you're looking at things. Obviously, there's always going to be injury scares, as we saw the other day with that knee problem, that he came back and dropped 27 points in a quarter. He doesn't sit back, despite the narrative, he doesn't sit back-to-backs. It's not a regular thing that he does. So just be aware that that's a fake narrative. And he's just been awesome. I don't know what more there is to say. Number 2 is Fred VanVleet. 37 minutes a night, 7 games in the last 2 weeks. He's averaging 23 points with 3.5 threes, 4 rebounds, almost 6 assists, 2.7 steals, and over a block a game, and shooting 91% from the line, 42% from 3, and 44% overall. And when you look at all those numbers, the only thing that stands out to me as being outrageous is the blocks. 1.1 blocks is very high. Now, 2.7 steals is very high, but this is a dude that can be a 2 steals per game player. But 20 points, 3.5 threes, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 44 and 91, including 42% from 3. It's not outrageous at all. He's the 17th ranked player this year. I think he for sure will finish as a second round guy. I know that I was, people didn't like it in my drafts when I took him at the start of the third round. I'm pretty happy with it. There's some of my other picks I'm not so happy with, but I was consistently taking VanVleet and Levine at the back end of the second and start of the third, along, of course, with Yusuf Nurkic, which ends up being shithouse. But pretty happy with where those guys ended up. Number 3.
I'm a fun guy.
Kawhi Leonard, VanVleet's former teammate. 29 points in 35 minutes, 4 assists, 6 rebounds, 54 and 95. And like VanVleet's numbers, there's nothing that's completely unsustainable here. Sure, he's shooting 64% from 2, but he's literally one of the best 2-point shooters in the entire NBA. So while that might come down a little bit, it's not crazy. 95% from the line, that probably drops. 33% from 3, that can come up. 4 assists, he's been averaging more than that this year. So there's room for some regression, there's room for some progression. He's the 6th ranked player this year, Kawhi. He plays back-to-backs. If you took that flyer on him at the end of the first round, you're being handsomely rewarded. Trae Young's at number 4. Young has not been that good this year, but he is up to the 25th ranked player now. And over the last 6 games, he's averaging 33 points, 9 assists, 4 triples. He's shooting well, finally. 93% from the line, 49% from the field, and 48% from 3. We're going to experience some regression here from Trae in terms of those shooting numbers. 34 usage is obviously encouraging. The big minutes are encouraging. We worry a little bit, of course, that he's out with his calf problem or miss the last game with a calf problem. He's questionable for the Hawks' next outing. But it's good to see him back pushing into that first round discussion. Number 5 is Steph Curry. 28 points in 32 minutes, almost 6 boards, over 5 threes, almost 5.5 threes, 6 assists, shooting 52 and 92. Again, what's outrageous about this? He's the 8th ranked player this year. I think he can be a top 5 player this season. Everything he does there is relatively, maybe the 51% from 3 is not going to stick, but it's Steph bloody Curry, man. If Steph Curry shot 50% from 3 in a season, would anybody be surprised? I don't think so. It'd be outstanding, but I wouldn't be surprised. Number 6, Damian Lillard. Lillard, of course, out with his abdominal issue. He's questionable for the next game. 31 points in 36 minutes, 8.5 assists, almost 5 threes, 48 and 95. The only reason I say that maybe he's going to fall off, the 60% two-point shooting, but also the fact that the usage is being bumped up without CJ McCollum. Now, McCollum was getting equal, if not more, usage than Lillard to begin this season, and that was impacting Dame's start. Dame is up to being the 9th-ranked player over the course of the season. I think he's going to settle in that 6 to 10 range pretty comfortably, but there might be a slight drop-off from him. Number 7 is Kevin Durant, and you'll see, well, you can see if you're watching the video, that his teammates are both inside the top 10 as well. So they've got 3 guys ranked between 7 and 10. So safe to say they're fitting in okay. 30 points for Durant, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.6 blocks, 53 and 91, usage of 29%. Cool. Yeah, it's just what he is. He's the 2nd-ranked player this year. I think this is about the right spot for him, so he's going to suffer a little bit of a dip from where he began this year, but this is strong. Number 8, Big Chungus.
Big Chungus, Big Chungus, Big Chungus, big.
Nikola Jokic has fallen. He was the number 1 player. Yeah, well, he's been the number 1. He still is the number 1 player this year, but we talked about his assist numbers falling. He's averaging 28, 12, and just 5 now. He was averaging a triple-double to begin this season. And his steal numbers, he was up at 2 steals per game, and that is down to 1.3 steals here. And this is fine. This is the area that he was drafted. This is, I think, the area where we can expect him to be in this 5 to 10 range. It's all going to come down to, can he be a double-digit assist player, or is he going to be a 6-assist guy? And those steals are always going to come down. There's no worry about that. But it's the assists that really bring him from top 3 down to top 6 or 7. And that's what we've seen over this last 2 weeks. So it gives you a nice indication, I guess, of where of where he sits, of what his numbers can look like as we move forward, and what that value is depending on how the assist numbers continue. Number 9 is Jim Harden. 39 minutes, 22 points, 7.5 boards, 12 assists, and Harden is the 9th-ranked player here. And we know what he does, right? We know that he's been that massive scorer for so long. He's averaging just 22 points per game. Now, he might not become a big-time scorer. But one thing that I don't think the Nets team really should change for him, he is a guy that would average 2 steals and almost 1 block per game. He's at 0.7 steals and 0.5 blocks. And that's why people would always ask, what's the difference with Harden and Doncic? It's the same thing. The difference is that Harden would get 2 steals and 1 block. And if he gets 2 steals and 1 block again, he's the number 1 player. I think it's as simple as that, even if he scores only 23 points a game. I think he's going to be the number 1 player for the rest of the season. He's the 5th-ranked player over the course of this year. Big numbers. And then his teammate, Kai Irving, 37 minutes, 28. How weird. I know Kyrie calls himself Kai. It just doesn't roll off the tongue at all. 28 points per game, 6 assists, a block per game. Kyrie's not a bad shot blocker. 57 and 94, usage of 28%, true shooting of 67. These 3 are absolutely elite fantasy talents and elite NBA offensive players. Let's go to number 11. It is Luka Doncic, who's averaging 29, 7 and 9, 84 from the line. That is a big key for Doncic. 1.2 steals is also encouraging. That 84, if that's 74, then he's outside this top 12. But the free throws have been coming in good volume, and he's hitting them at a good rate. Number 12, the Jedi.
But what about scarves?
OG.
Balenciaga
Stop,
ones.
OG. You better stop, OG.
Now, Anunoby, out of all of the top 20s, played the fewest games, only 3. 34 minutes, 20 points, 3.7 triples, 2.3 steals, and almost 6 boards. Now, outside of the fact that he's shooting 73% from 3 in those 3 games, which drops his scoring, his field goal percentage, and his threes, the steals are normal. He could actually block more shots. The rebounds are fine. The free throws are fine. Like, he should be a guy who's a top 40, pushing top 30 player. He's the 39th ranked player this year. Number 13, Chris Paul. I think this is going to fall off, but a lot of these games without Devin Booker, 21, 5, and 9 with 2 steals. And that's been one of the biggest issues with Paul this year. The steal numbers have dropped way off. But back up to normal there. Usage was up, minutes was up, 51 and 96% shooting, which is a true shooting of 60%. That's elite. 36% from 3. It's really that usage we expect to dip. and then he'll fall back to in that 25 to 35 range. But if he can keep the steals up, then he pushes a lot higher. Number 14 is Zach LaVine, the skater boy. 24.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 53 and 100% from the line. One of 2 players in this top 100 who hasn't missed a free throw over the last 2 weeks. Top 100, top 20, who hasn't missed a free throw. That's just normal production from LaVine. He's the 12th ranked player this year, and I think that's about where he's going to finish. Absolutely nothing wrong with those numbers at all. And number 15, people criticised it last week. Man, Al Horford, why is he number 1? What is going on? Well, Horford's played now 4 games, and he's still the 15th ranked player. Only 27 minutes, 17 points, 3 threes, 7.5 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, true shooting of 64%. Hasn't missed a free throw. Granted, he's only taken 3 of them, but he hasn't missed one. He won't be this good, obviously, but he's a must-roster player. And I think he's a guy that can be around that 80 to 90 mark, but you just worry about what happens with him at the end of the season. Number 16 is the Crucifix Christian Wool. We don't have an update on his ankle injury at the time of me recording this. I am fearful that we're looking at a month to 2 months. That's my fear, but I don't know that. Wood is only averaging 26 minutes a night over the last 2 weeks, but still 18 and 9 with a block, 1.4 steals, and a whopping true shooting of 78%, which is 67 from the field and 78 from the line. He was probably going to be this top 20 sort of guy rest of the season. Obviously, the injury is going to have an impact on that. He's 20th so far this year. Number 17. LeBron James. First time we're seeing LeBron in the top 20. He's 24th overall this year, 17th in the last 2 weeks, averaging 27, 8, and 8. The assists are way down from last year. That's part of why he's dropped so much. Poor free throws is a concern, but he's shooting the 3 ball fantastically. 44% from 3 over his last 7 games. He's up to 53% from the field. He's just doing LeBron things, and I think we look at him as that guy who's like a 17 to 25 ranked player. Number 18. Had Bradley Beal on my sell high list, I think, a while ago, saying that when Westbrook came back, there was going to be an issue with a reduction in usage because he was getting like 45% usage. And it hasn't reduced much. He's still at 39. But we're seeing Beal come back from being that 9th ranked player down to 18th at the moment. 35 points per game, 3 threes, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 47 and 87, 34% from 3. And nothing about what he's doing there, or I go, oh yeah, just wait for that to bounce back up. 47% from the field, 87 from the line, 34 from 3. He's not an elite 3-point shooter. He's a good volume 3-point shooter. He's not an elite 3-point percentage guy. In fact, there is a risk, and it's probably not going to come true, but there is a risk that he doesn't average 35 points a game. Maybe he does. I don't know. But everything else there, is there anything else? 3 threes, 5 boards, 4 assists, 1 steal, 0.6 blocks, 47 and 87. If I look at all those numbers, do I look at Beal and go, well, he's definitely increasing in all of those areas? I don't think that's true. I think it's actually probably more risk of regression of the 35 points per game going to 30 than there is of a marginal or a significant increase in assists, steals, blocks, or rebounds. Something worth monitoring. Number 20 is Miles Turner. Only 16 points, but 3.3 blocks and elite percentages, 58 and 77, which is a true shooting of 71%. He's hitting 2 threes per game. His value is going to fluctuate depending on how many shots he blocks. The 2-point shooting feels real this year. I don't know why it is so much up. I guess it's just the type of offense they're running under their new coach, but he's been really, really good. And then number 20, first time appearance for him in the top 20.
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yanni averaging 27, 13, and 8, 1.2 blocks, 65 from the line, 64 from the field. Of course, if you're punting free throws, that value skyrockets. He's only the 32nd ranked player this year in overall value, but again, you're well aware that if you're punting free throws, Giannis Antetokounmpo is not the 32nd ranked player. He's down on where he was last year, but this is good. The last 4 guys out, Paul George at 21, Harrison Barnes, actually, I know you guys love it, the pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. He's at number 22, Sabonis at 23, and Jason Tatum at 24. Let's move on now and talk points leagues, the top 20 players in points leagues. This is using default Yahoo scoring over the last 2 weeks. And you see the guys who were picked at number 1 and 2 being the number 2 and 1 and 2 ranked players. Giannis is at number 1, averaging 57 points per game. Luka Doncic is at number 2, averaging 53 fantasy points per game. Luka's the number 2 ranked player over the course of the season. Giannis the number 3 ranked player. This level of production from Yanni is what I expected preseason. This is where you drafted him, and this is how it's working. Number 3 is Big Chungus Nikola Jokic, averaging 52 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. That's a little bit down on his seasonal average. I reckon there's a chance he does drop under 50 fantasy points per game as we move forward, which would push him into the 5 to 6 type area rather than 3. But he's obviously looked great. And then Joel Embiid at number 4. Embiid is averaging 52 fantasy points per game, which is up on his season average of just 50.5. Not that much different, but it is up. And as we detailed in the category section, perhaps there's some level of regression from Embiid, but not a huge amount. Number 5 is LeBron James, much better points league player than category player. He's 10th for the season in points league, but over the last 2 weeks, he's up to 50 points per game, which has pushed him into the top 5. I think he can be around that 47 to 50 mark, which is inside the top 10. And I have been mentioning him as a bit of a soft buy low in points leagues in particular. Number 6 is Jim Butler. Butler's averaging 49 points over the last 3 games since he returned. That's up on what he was doing. Remember, he started the season really slowly. I don't think he's a 49 point per game player. He's averaging 25, 8, and 7 in this time. I think he's more of a 43 to 45 points per game player, but still been awesome. Number 7 is Damian Lillard, up to 49 fantasy points. That's up on his season average. I think he's going to be able to do better than that actually moving forward. And then when CJ comes back, it will drop off. Number 8 is Trae Young. We talked about how his shooting has improved. He's averaging almost 49 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks, which is up from 44. I think he's a 46 fantasy point per game player. Number 9 is Jim Harden, who's at 49 points. He averages 50 this year. I think he averages 50 moving forward. So he's a little bit down because he's only averaging 21.7 points. Number 10 is Brad Beal, who's got 48 fantasy points per game. He's at 50 for the season. I reckon he's more of a 46 to 47 guy, so maybe a slight decrease there, as I detailed just a little bit earlier. Number 11, Kawhi Leonard. He's averaging 48 fantasy points per game, up on his season average. I think he's more of a 46 guy, so a little bit of a decline coming there, while Kevin Durant's at 47 fantasy points per game, which is down on his season average, but I think it's sort of about right, given how the adjustment has now taken place with him and Harden and Kyrie all together. So he's probably a 48 fantasy point player. Number 13, Fred VanVleet, dropping 46 a game over the last 7 games. Is significantly up on his seasonal numbers. I think he's more of a 40 to 41 point guy. So there's a little bit of an increase there, of course, fueled by that 54-point explosion, which was like 77 Yahoo fantasy points. Number 14 is Anthony Davis. He's giving us 46 fantasy points, which is a little bit up on his season numbers. Not much. I think he can get better than this, but the free throws continue to be an absolute bafflement. That's why he wasn't even in the top 24 for category leagues, and it is impacting his overall fantasy point scoring. Number 15 is Kyrie Irving, dropping 45 a night. That's probably about the right area for Kyrie, right in that spot there. Number 16 is Steph Curry, 45 fantasy points for him as well. That's his seasonal average. I actually think he can do a little bit more. He's probably a 46 points per game player, which puts him in that 11 to 15 sort of bracket. But obviously he's been great. Number 17, Jason Tatum, since he returned, is averaging 45 fantasy points. And I think that's actually bang on for Tatum. Trying to share the court with Brown and with Kemba. This is about the right area for him. De'Aaron Fox, a significantly better fantasy points player than category league player, has really stepped it up, averaging 43.5 over the last 2 weeks. Now, he's only averaging 38 this season, but I think he's a 44 point per game player. I had him as a top 20 player to begin the season, and this is where he is now. Zion Williamson also been to the top 20. I had him as a top 20 fantasy points player, or around about, I'm pretty sure, to begin the year, averaging 43 over the last 2 weeks. He's only 35th over the course of the season. I think he can maintain this number. And then the double royal, Julius Randle. Randall's the 18th ranked player over the course of the season, averaging 44 points. He's at 43 these last 2 weeks. So this is about the right area, that 18 to 23 type zone for Julius Randle. The next 4 players are Chris Paul, Bam Adebayo, Russell Westbrook, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Guys, that will do it for me today. I'll be back later on with a what to watch for Saturday's games. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the little bell on YouTube as well. Give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Tell your friends. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.